Hey Lewis, how are you?
Yes, good. Thank you, Shabri. Everything's becoming a little bit busier, which is good. We've got another big event on tonight for one of our communities. So, yeah, we're just all gearing up for that.
Amazing, amazing. So you've launched a new community recently, haven't you? Retention Seekers.
The fifth and final piece to the jigsaw, yeah, retention seekers, which was quite aptly named by one of the guys in my team, Darius. I'll give him a little shout out on here. He thought he was being funny. He shouted it out in a meeting, and we actually ended up running with it. So yeah, no, plaudits to him.
I love it. I'm a fan of like what's on the tin, like say what you, but this is really taking that to a new level. I really like it. So kudos to him. But look, I'm really glad to have you on today. I know that you play a massive role in the SDR community, so really keen to tuck in some of that. And I know that we're going to have a really good conversation. So thank you. I guess Lewis, for those people who don't know you, who might be listening, it'd be really great if you could give an introduction to who you are and what role it is that you do play in the world of sales development.
Yeah, sure. So not actually an SDR myself. So I'm Lewis Gadsdon. I'm Associate Director of Wiser Elite. We're a specialist tech sales recruitment company. I'm also the founder of SDRs of London, which is a peer-to-peer mentorship community for London's best lead generators. But the reason why I'm so passionate about the SDR market is my role coming through over the last 7 years at Wiser Elite has been solely focused on the SDR market. I've worked the market for 7 years, worked with a lot of the companies in the London space that most people are familiar with. And yeah, just super passionate about it.
Amazing. Well, look, two really good angles we've got here, which is the SDR community, but also um, your actual recruitment side. So, what companies are looking for, but also what SDRs are looking for. And I'm sure that's continued to evolve. So, excited to tuck into both of them. But I guess just starting with the SDRs of London community, why was it needed? What made you start it, Lewis?
Yeah, so it was 2019, and so we were there, and we were just looking for. We were always known in the SDR market, but we were looking at things of like, okay, what could really take us to that next level? And we had a light bulb moment. There was another company in London who were setting up an SDR mentorship scheme for them, and I respected the hustle, but they were trying to charge them £500 a year out of their own pocket to be mentored by these amazing SaaS sales leaders, which I looked through the list and some of them were pretty damn good. But I thought, what can we do that obviously is also first and foremost going to help SDRs reach that next level in their careers, help them out, develop as salespeople, but also put us in that shop window and make sure that people know to come to us as and when the time's right. So I just jumped in. I took 15 SDRs that I'd placed at different companies. I took 15 SDRs at companies that I'd quite like to work with, cold messaged them, put them all in a WhatsApp thread together, and was like, well, there you go. Why don't you mentor each other for free? And that's exactly what they did. Lo and behold, a month later, the pandemic happened. We went from around about 70 members to about 250 members in a week because everyone was just looking for new ways to sell, to gain insight, to bounce ideas off each other, to get any sort of scrap of knowledge that they could, whether they were selling to CFOs or sales or whoever else it may be. Like they were just trying to gain as much knowledge as possible. And I just thought, okay, with obviously the pandemic was awful, but at the same time, we've ridden the wave a little bit here, and I think we've really started something. So fast forward a few months later, we did our first lunch and learn with Vidyard, and they wanted to get on board and help. Fast forward even more, a few more years later, we're now doing sponsored events with Aircall, Trumpet, loads of different brands that you would have heard of, Reach Desk, who are all coming in wanting to help out with the SDRs of London community, help get obviously spread the word of what they do, but at the same time, the main thing is helping SDRs along with their careers and helping them reach that next level. That all worked rather well a couple of years in, and all the originals of SDRs of London started getting quite good, and lo and behold got promoted. So we had to create AEs of London as well, which is for emerging account executives, because the subjects were different. They weren't getting as much value from people just talking about lead generation all the time. And then from there, we created GTM leaders as well, which is obviously our early stage founders and sales leaders community for tech. And last and not least, Making Moves, which is our females and tech sales community, where less so it's about helping you as a salesperson, more so a catalyst for change, where for example, we did an event 6 months ago surrounding being an individual contributor and going on maternity leave, because obviously when you go on maternity leave, you lose all of your OTE, which is wrong, shouldn't be the case. So we're just trying to raise awareness with subjects like that. But we're busy.
I think you've literally cornered every community. You've got it all now. And
you don't need any more.
That's amazing. I'm sure you would have said you don't need any more at 3, but you've done a fantastic job. So what are some of the key themes that you find coming up? Or I guess, what are the areas that you think the members benefit from the most within the SDR community?
Yeah, look, I think, I mean, we've got obviously we're on Casper's podcast here. The age-old debate is what data provider to use and what's the most effective. But that comes up at least once a fortnight. But aside from that, people just want to gain insight as to how people are getting the best connection rates. It's quite a shocking statistic, to be honest with you, which I'll come on to shortly. Over the summer period, they were like an all-time low. But the best connection rates, how to get themselves to the next level, gaining insight as to what the next step looks like for them as an account executive and what they're having to do. They compare commission structures. I've had some quite open and honest conversations in front of 250 members of the community about how they're remunerated and all of those sorts of things. But for the most part, it's the most pleasantly surprising thing is just how much people want to learn and develop. People used to think salespeople was just a job that you fell into, and it wasn't really a craft or something to perfect. But running this community for the last 3 years and seeing everything that's discussed, people want to learn. People want to go into this ahead of going into blue chip grad schemes or investment banking. Like, you know what I mean? They want to know and they want to perfect that craft. But I would say, yeah, that's the key themes that we normally see in the thread.
Okay, so best connection rate, how to get to the next level, and then kind of maximizing your comp and your commission. So I wanted to touch on the first one. I think almost every podcast guest we've had on here, we've talked about a lot about cutting through the noise and most effective channels. And I think when you say best connection rate, are you seeing people be more keen to use the phone, or are you seeing it go the other way? And do you think that there is sort of a bit of more of a comeback for the phone that is taking place right now?
Yeah, no, I think the phone is making a massive comeback, and I think that nearly of all the SDR roles we're recruiting right now, their first touch point and cadence is a cold call.
Yeah.
Like everyone's trying to get there quicker, be more efficient, cut through the noise. The reason being is messaging is still great, and good messaging is excellent and can be super effective, but people are just flooding everyone with poor emails right now, and so the automatic response for decision makers is to just delete them and not read them because they haven't got the time to do it, and it's almost sort of drubbed into people that there isn't much money to spend right now across the board. So they're just like, why even bother? Whereas obviously if you cold call someone, you're actively interrupting someone's day, aren't you? In a good way, hopefully. And hopefully, you're gonna provide a solution to some pain that they're facing. But yeah, across the board, the phone is making a massive comeback, in my opinion.
It's interesting that you say that about messaging, because I agree. I think messaging is still good, but what I'm hearing is a lot of companies are moving away from, I think when they first brought SDRs on, they said, well, the objective is to sell the meeting. I think we've moved so far beyond the objective is to sell the meeting. And, we're talking about how actually can my product or service really help you and add value to you. And that's why I think nailing the ICP is so important right now, because it isn't just about selling the meeting. That's just an expensive way of running your sales process and sales cycle. Are you seeing more of that from, I guess, the clients that you work with and how they're briefing you on the roles? Are you seeing any of that come through?
Yeah, I wrote a post about this morning, literally on LinkedIn. The reason it's quite timely.
Very timely.
What I've seen is, and this is in a report that a friend of mine sent me last week. There's been a massive shift in SDR teams reporting into sales from marketing. When I first started this 7 years ago, SDR, BDR, it was a marketing focused role. It was about getting as many people in front of a product as possible and letting the AE do the rest from there. They weren't reporting into sales as much. And as you say, it was about selling the meeting. Just sell the meeting, see what you think of it. Nothing else to be done. If you don't like it, it's fine. Whereas now you get hounded for doing that as an SDR. Yeah. What that's meant overall is that SDRs are now a lot responsible for far more of the sales cycle. And if not even that, there's added stages into the sales cycle as well to ensure that they're properly qualified. Yeah. Also, it means that SDR commission structures have changed massively. Whereas before, I remember the earlier SDR roles that I worked on, you just get flat demo fees. That was it. You get a set fee for every demo that you set. When you reach 100% of your target in a month, you may get a kicker. That may go up by 50% or double if you were lucky, and then reset again at the start of the month. Now, I'm working with businesses that don't even do that anymore. It's a case of you get your commission when the deal closes, even though you're not responsible for the latter end of the sales cycle. It's all about closed revenue. So it's up to you to qualify that opportunity as best as possible as an SDR and make sure that it's properly teed up for the AE. So yeah, it's had some knock-on effects, and I see there's pros and cons to it. Obviously, the pros are you've got more predictable, forecastable revenue early on when leads get handed over, which is obviously great for companies. But what that's meant overall is that SDR commissions probably as a whole have gone down.
So I think what you're saying is you're seeing a lot of those go the other way, and I think, you know, there's always been founders who've said to me, oh, should we have part of the SDR's comp plan on closed one? And, you know, my view on that is it should never be part of it because they can't influence it. But if you want to have additional kickers and you do want to have that as an extra, then I think that's great. But I think it's really difficult to put someone's earnings into something that's completely uncontrollable.
It's hard. It's really hard. And like I say, I know the market pretty well. I'm not expert enough in sort of sales enablement strategy to say what's right and what's wrong. I can see why companies are doing it. It makes a lot of sense, but it does mean that SDRs are losing out on early career commissions as a result. But it's making them better salespeople longer term. So it's one of those things, and it really is available. And that's another theme. The progression to AE is getting much longer, and people are far more desperate to become AEs now.
How much of it that do you think has changed though? Because I know when I started, the only career path that everyone wanted to do was SDR to AE. I've then seen that evolve in the last few years and other options. I think, you know, really interesting one is customer success. How much are you seeing that change from, you know, all SDRs must be AEs to other options, and what are you seeing that's interesting around that?
Yeah, no, so the 3 or maybe 3/4 main paths you could argue, because CS and account management is different. Even though it's post-sale, you either an AE, you go into SDR management or business development management, don't you? You actually manage the other SDRs, or alternatively, you go into a post-sales job, either CS or account management, depending on which company you're working at and the structures that they have. So, like, I still say 75% of people want to be account executives. They get into sales for a reason. They want to, they want to earn commission. They want to progress. They back themselves to do it, and that's probably still the traits that I see in the best SDRs today. But that's not to say that it's wrong to go down the other paths either. I've seen a lot of people now who are offered SDR management positions in the interim of reaching AE as well. The companies are now sort of fixing that in almost as like a stepping stone to do that, serve your time in sort of managing the SDRs and doing that, and we'll promise you within sort of 9 months to a year, we can then get you to an account executive. But the whole reason as to why, obviously, I hate to say it because it's just boring to talk about, but the economy, obviously, all of that sort of thing. In 2021, it was amazing. We had a great time because for the first time ever, roles outweighed talent in the industry, and we had people coming to us who were generating promotions from SDR to account executive just by moving companies. Yeah. And I'm not talking SMB AE, I'm talking full blown 55 to 65k mid-market account executive roles from 35k SDR roles overnight.
Yeah.
with no closing experience whatsoever. But obviously, they'd smash their targets as SDRs. They were at reputable companies. They were probably, in some cases, going to smaller organizations, but it was still happening. Then, obviously, when the bubble burst, there's an abundance of AE talent that's 6 months to a year into their closing roles with not very good proven track records. And obviously, when the powers that be see that, they automatically go after data, which meant that we have mass redundancies, especially in the AE market, meaning we've got over 200 applicants to any sort of account executive role, which is bad news for us because companies then don't need us. So that's what we've been fighting with over the last sort of 6 to 9 months or so. Seems to be evening out now, which is good. But it's meant overall that the queue from the SDRs has got much longer because companies are snapping up decent people with, good some closing experience whatsoever. They don't want to have to put the effort into training and upskilling and that sort of thing, especially when money's tight. So yeah, it's been double, triple, quadruple edged swords, but it seems to be getting better now.
So I think shifting gears, Lewis, we're going into Q4 soon. Scary. What are you seeing? Because the last quarter is obviously always a tricky one for anyone in a go-to-market role. What sort of things are you seeing as companies move into Q4 and also as they start to plan for Q1 next year as well?
Yeah, sure. I still think, obviously, the overarching sort of selfish thing that I'm noticing is that tech companies are not employing people with any sort of sales experience whatsoever into SDR roles anymore. That's the first thing. It's just not happening. We pivoted away from it for a lot of it. We still have some entry level positions, but for the most part, all SDR positions now tend to require some sort of cold calling or outbound sales experience, which is very different to how it was even 2 years ago, I would say. So it's now lots of people who are leaving university or education. They're having to go do stints in other sorts of sales roles, delegate sales, in sometimes even like recruitment, for example, other companies in order to get their foot in the door if they generally want to be an SDR. So yeah, experience is what's going to get you in the door somewhere if you're looking to get into a tech company right now as a salesperson. In terms of actual sales strategy, what I'm seeing a lot of and what I'm hearing a lot of the community, and it's working for us as well in our outbound strategy, it's just instant problem solves. A lot of salespeople are unloading the library from the first touch point, when in actual fact you just the prospect just looking for a book, or even better, just a page in the book. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's what they need. With I can easily put it in recruitment terms, but if I've found a piece of like pain, for example, where I know full well that a business is hiring an SDR, they sell into, let's say, cybersecurity, and I've got, and I can see that they're probably struggling slightly with gender diversity by looking at the LinkedIn, and I can put in, let's say, a female candidate who's got 11 months experience in cybersecurity and hit all their targets. Like, it's an instant problem solve, and they can find out and decide whether they like me or not later. People are just trying too much as to like sell themselves, go over the top on personalization, unloading all of their offering, rather than just being like, I see you've got a problem here, solve it, then let's chat, and then they can find out about you and what else you do and all that sort of thing. So the instant problem solve is probably the biggest thing that we're seeing right now, and that's what's getting results.
That's really interesting. I mean, lots of trends there that you're seeing. I think I've heard that as well, which is like, as soon as you get through to someone, because it's so rare to get through to someone, as soon as you do get through to someone, you give them everything you've got, and it's kind of this like verbal diarrhea. And again, sort of trying to sell that meeting. So I think it is changing a lot about piquing curiosity, adding value. We had Jack Nico on here who's been amazing. He talked a lot about that kind of nurture. So how do you deal with all those people that are not right now, but focus
Yes.
on relationship building? What would you recommend to an SDR if they did want to really focus on nurturing, relationship building, and actually building that rapport and trust, which I think is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds basic, but the key thing is you've got to remember who you've messaged. I'm speaking to I'm speaking to a lot of SDRs right now who will just go on 4 touch point cadences and then all of a sudden just be like, okay, well, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And then they just completely forget about it. They go into the deepest, darkest depths of the CRM, and they're only to be picked up by someone else who's probably better organized 6 months later. And then most of the time you will see that second person, that second SDR, will get something out of it. But yeah, organization is key. Like, just organization, making sure you're doing it, not giving them the impression that you're not going to go away, you're not being pushy, and you're not being annoying, but you're not going to go away without some sort of answer.
Yeah.
And some of the best stuff that I've seen recently, actually, I'm not sure if Andy Law's on here, but he posts some really great content. But he posted something about an objection handle of not being interested. Like, when you get the automatic email response of, okay, yeah, not interested, and that automatically, even speaking from experience of our team here, is when a lot of people just be like, oh, okay, fine, well, here's our deck, and I'll reach out again in 6 months. He came out with a reply which I thought was awesome, which is a case of, okay, thanks for the clarification on not being interested. I'm guessing it's one of these 3 options as to why you're not interested, which is the fact that you're not the right person, you don't have budget, or you already have a similar solution. Could you steer me in the direction of which one it is, and just keep them talking? And obviously from there, you can do it. Obviously, they've got to reply. Yeah. Or even better if you can do it over the phone, because they're most likely to tell you then. But a nice consultative way of basically saying, I'm not taking no for an answer, and just trying one more time. Like, I think that's what SDRs have got to do moving forward, because it is honed into people that there is no money, that we have not got any money to spend, budgets are tight, we're not taking on new softwares, we're not taking on new services, and that, that's that. Whereas that is a nice way of at least digging a little bit more and adding a bit more detail, if anything, to the CRM under their names.
I love that. I think it's about calling out the elephant in a room in a non-pushy way. And, Richard Smith talks a lot about this in his book, Problem Prospecting, which I think he gives some really good sort of practical advice. But I think it's that in itself is a bit of a pattern interrupt, because 99% of the time, if someone says, I'm not interested, you say, okay, or sort of, to your example, attach your PDF, or your deck and say, okay, but if you change your mind, then here's what we do, which is the wrong way to deliver that message. So that in itself is a pattern interrupt. If you're actually saying, well, hold on a second, do you mind if I kind of explore why? So I think that's really good. Obviously, you're on the receiving end of a lot of prospecting as well yourself, Lewis. So what stands out to you, and what are you looking for when someone reaches out to you?
Yeah, sure. I post about this regularly, and I've said about it on enough podcasts now as the method that I use. And likewise, I'll respect it if someone tries to use it on me as well, which is Carl Coleman's 5x5x5. It's easily transitionable into recruitment as well. We can do that, which is just 5 minutes of research, finding 5 key insights, and then spending 5 minutes writing that message, no more, then moving on to the next one. And that's that. So the key things that I always look for is nice short message to the point, 150, 200 words. If someone's messaging me, this is no more than 3-word subject line. But in that first line, that is the personalization that's going to make me want to open it. Is that so? Obviously, from an email inbox, you can always preview what the first line's going to be. If I see Lewis, I hope you're well, I'm not going to open it. It's going to delete it, especially if I don't know who they are. Or as you will see from a recent post, I had an abundance of quick question, Lewis, which got to a point where I felt like I had to have a bit of a rant on LinkedIn. And even still, I had people messaging me quick question, Lewis, to which I've just started sending them the link to my posts and not getting many replies after that. So, but look, if I can see that you've done your research on me, personalization, I can see that, loved your recent post about quick question or whatever else it may be. Or I had a couple of tongue-in-cheek replies after that as well, which also got my attention. I'm like, good, you're like researching me.
Yeah.
And that's what I always do to prospects. I don't send out an abundance of messages. We don't have a sales engagement tool here. Everything is done manually.
Yeah.
So therefore, I make sure that the 10 to 15 messages maybe that I send a day to people, they're done good, and I have personalization points, and I'm solving that instant problem, like what I mentioned before, and I've got reason to reach out. There's certain places where people will obviously nurture and try to reach out, as we mentioned before, where you probably haven't really got something. It's more like a touch point and staying in touch with people. But any touch point like that will always add value and it'll always be relevant to that prospect. But yeah, that's the key stuff that I'd look out for, and you'd always get a response from me if you follow those sorts of rules.
Amazing. Well, I think you make it quite easy for anyone who is trying to prospect you, because you talk about what you like and don't like so much on LinkedIn. So you would think that people have got the magic key there.
Well, you'd hope so, but my inbox would say otherwise. So.
I know what you mean. I mean, like when you send an email, you can see obviously the subject line and the first line. And then someone recently said on LinkedIn, if you get messaged on LinkedIn, you actually see the bottom of the message first as it pops up. So it is really interesting to see how different platforms actually, might require the end of your message, having a PS for personalization or something like that actually prove to be more effective. So that's interesting. And what about on the phone? What do you respond well to on the phone?
I had a cold call the other day, and because just this is no particular reason, but obviously because I recruit SDRs all the time, so I only think it's right and good karma that when I get cold call, I pick up, especially when it's from a tech company. Obviously, it's in my best interest to find out who they are, because obviously that's a potential way in for me as well. But at the same time, I'll always hear them out, or always be polite. But again, like I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel with this. It can just be a case of, Lewis, like lots of people always start with, it's cold call, so hang up if you want to. I'm like, no, I won't hang up, go on, what are you going to say? I normally just ask, where are you calling from? And they'll say, I've had people from Cognizant call me before, which is quite funny because I've placed quite a lot of the team. So, but yeah, just hear them out, go through all of that sort of thing, hear what they have to say, and I'll just be open and honest with them as to what the current situation is. Obviously, 9 times out of 10, we don't need it. But as long as they've done their research on me and they're coming to me with something based on my profile or our company specifically that they think they can either, obviously it's normally about making you more money, saving you more time. It's normally what lots of software products are about, right? As long as they can attach something to us specifically, I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to listen. If it's a spray and pray, I'm just like, yeah, nah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear that. I think also people have got a real opportunity if someone picks up the phone. You talked about data earlier. I think with the right tool, like Casper, but if with the right tool, you actually can really cut through the noise. I mean, I get 10 to 15 messages a day across LinkedIn and email. My phone just doesn't ring, and I know my number is out there. So it is just about, I think, the people that are willing to set themselves apart from the rest and actually put in that extra effort.
Yeah, no, for sure. Literally, the research is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Like, just you don't need an abundance. You don't need to know my life story. You certainly don't need to go on my Facebook. I've had people do that before as well. But you just need something to attach as to why you're calling me or my company. Like, I think that's it. That's it, and just show that you know us.
Yeah.
Show that you know us, and I'm not just another number on your list for the day.
Yeah. Well, do your research and don't contact Lewis on Facebook. I think that's pretty good. That's pretty but thank you so much. There's been so many nuggets that I've scribbled down on here. And I know that you're sort of right at the forefront of this industry. You've done an amazing job building a community. So I'm sure everyone who's part of that is very grateful. So if anyone wants to reach out or join the community, or how should people get in touch with you?
Yeah, awesome. Obviously, connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free, Lewis Gadsdon. My last name is quite awkward to spell, but you should be able to find me. And also, if you want to sign up to the SDRs of London community, there is a link on the SDRs of London LinkedIn page. You can either be a mailing list member, where you still get invited to the in-person events, you get a monthly newsletter, you get some of the benefits, or alternatively, you can be a core member, which means you go in the WhatsApp thread and have about 300 other SDRs opinions, views at your fingertips, and you can ask questions and pretty much get it back in real time.